Hi, statistics student. This video is for chapter 1.1. In chapter 1.1, we're going to talk about some terms, why we study statistics, what are the different types of statistical study that we will come across or we will be looking at, and just introduce some terms. So let's get started. So in the beginning, we would talk about what is statistics, what do they do, the branch of the study of statistics is the science of collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and presenting data. So it's really about using data, it's about collecting data, and also presenting them. And the two main branches of statistics are descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. So when a statistician or a researcher or yourself um, decided to do a statistical study, there is actually two main branches that classify um, according to your goal of using the data. So if you will be doing a descriptive statistical study, if your goal is just to organize the data that you collect, sometimes you don't even collect them. You just pick up some data that is already, you know, collected by someone, and you just use table or chart to present the known or collected data. You just want to present it. You want to describe what you see. So that is called descriptive statistics. So basically, you use tables, you summarize it, you use graphics to show the important features of your data. Okay, so you are not, extrapolating results from it. You do not uh, draw conclusion or generalize the data to a larger groups of population. So, and because that is what inferential statistics is about. Inferential statistics want to use data that is collected or have been collected so that you can make some conclusion. You can do some inference. That's why it's called inferential statistics. You can generalize the data that you have to a larger population or larger groups of people. So those are called inferential statistics. So in both cases, they collect data or they use data that they have, but their motivation or the final goal of using the data is different, and that's distinguish the types of study that you are doing. So why do we want to study statistics? As a college student, statistics is a prerequisite for a lot of courses. So, what is the benefit of someone knowing statistics? So that I would say there's three main reasons. So first is um, we can use whatever that we have learned to understand statistical study. Very often whatever career that you are embedded on, you will need to read result of statistical study. You will read conclusions that are drawn by statistician. If you have some background knowledge of statistics, you can read and understand them. By knowing a lot more vocabs, concept, and procedures, you can actually understand, evaluate statistical study. Not statistical study are correct. Sometimes people, do statistical study or make conclusion from statistical study that is wrong. The second thing is to do research yourself. If you want to find something from the world, you can do an experiment or you can actually use statistical techniques to present data. Okay. And lastly, for all college education, any things that you learn is to make yourself be a better consumer and citizens. Okay. So the first example that I want to do is I will present two statistical study and I'll ask you if these are can be classified as descriptive or inferential study. Remember, for descriptive study, you are just presenting the data. You are not doing any generalization. You are not doing any educated guess. You basically just do a survey and present it. So first, A survey was done asking 300 students how old they are, and then a chart is displayed is used to display the result of the survey. So this obviously is a descriptive study. you collect groups of students' age, and then you display the results. Other people can use this to do more inferential study, but for this particular purpose, the action is a survey and the result is a chart, and that's it. And this would be descriptive. There's no inferential conclusion drawn from it. B. A hospital administrator want to see if fewer mistakes are made if nurses are forced to take frequent breaks. So after observing 300 nurses who were not forced to take frequent breaks and 400 who were forced to take frequent breaks, the administrator draw a conclusion. So look at this administrator collect two groups of data, one from 300 nurses, one from 400 nurses, and obviously this administrator is trying to compare if there are fewer mistakes from one versus the other. So now this result will be only for the 300 and 400 nurses, but the motivation of the administrator is not just to look at the 300 nurses or 400 nurses, but to generalize if fewer mistakes are made if nurses. So when they say nurses, it's all nurses. So they're using like you can say, a small group of data to generalize for a larger general kind of conclusion. So we say these are inferential statistics. And very often, inferential statistics look at the comparison, look at when one of the features of the data are changed, if it leads to other changes. Okay, so this would be inferential. So I would say, if I want to write down the answer, so you'll find these a similar question in your class worksheets. You would say this is descriptive statistical study, and this is inferential statistical study. Okay, so the second part of 1.1 is to introduce some terms. And there's actually 7 terms that we're doing. So I'm going to go through them one by one, basically read off the definition, and then at the end, we would do some examples to apply them. First is population. So the population is the target group or person or objects under study. So if you want to study about a big groups, so in general, a certain groups, you should interview everyone. It's called a census but it takes time and money to study the entire populations. Now, population is an English word, but so it just represent like people that live in a city or live in an area. But in statistics, population is the target group. So your target group could be buildings, could be rivers, could be animals. So just any objects that is your target objects under the study is called population. Sample is a subset of the larger population that you have collected, so you can gain some information about the populations. So this is the second term. So very often when we do inferential statistics, we would collect a sample, we present the sample data, but then we make generalization about it for the population. So that's so when you're doing a inferential study, there is a difference between population and sample. You want to know about the whole population, but you only collect a sample. In a descriptive study, maybe you do not want to know or you do not know make any generalization, but anyway, the whatever data that you collect is a sample. Unless you're saying, okay, so that sample is my whole target group. Okay, then we have two, so that's the first two terms. The third one is called parameter. Parameter is a numerical characteristic of a population. So after you collect data from the population, because you did a census, you calculate some characteristics. So general characteristics would be like the average, right? So if you are collecting some numerical data, like, average age of all students at a college. So that would be, this number is always numerical. It's called a parameter. Or maybe you can say, oh, what is the percentage of the students in the college are female? So a percent of the characteristics, it is also a parameter for the whole population. Statistics is another. So it is something is also a numerical term, but it is a characteristic that you calculate from a sample. So you are doing the same average, you are doing the same percent, but it's the average from the sample and it's the average or the percent from the sample. So anything that you calculate from the sample is called a statistics. Anything that you calculate from the whole population is called a parameter. Okay. If you are doing an inferential study, you would use your statistics to predict the population parameter. So here I say sample is collected, so we can use the statistics to estimate or predict the corresponding parameter of the population. So for example, if I collect 100 students age, and it is a sample of a college, and it is 25 years old, then I can use it to predict, oh, the average age of the whole college for all the students is 25. Okay, so to do a good prediction, the sample must be representative. Okay, so a good sample should have the same characteristics of the populations. So it must be representative. So representative is very important to make sure that you have a correct estimation of the parameter. So how do I have a good sample? So a good sample would be your sample selection from the population is through a random procedures, and also you do not want it to a too small sample. So we'll go into details on how much is the sample size. Well, we'll actually look at this in until chapter 8. Okay, chapter 8. Chapter 8, chapter 7, chapter 8, we'll talk about how large a sample size is good enough so that it is large enough. And then for selection, so for random procedures, random does not mean that, oh, I just don't have any plan. Because in English, random means just no planning, whatever that comes up. But in statistics, random means you go through a random process, and such as a random generator for your selection. You do not use your personal opinion or whatever algorithms to find your sample, so that it is your personal choice or emotion or whatever is not taken into consideration. So we'll talk about sample selection tomorrow when we do 1.2. So more about representative sample. Representative sample, if the sample is representative, we can use the sample mean to predict population mean. We can also use sample proportion to predict population proportion. Proportion is a fancy word in statistics that just represent percent. Okay. For example, if I want to say what is the percentage of female in a college, so we in statistics we will say what is the proportion of female in college. Percentage is like 50%, 52% in proportion. Very often we use decimal to talk about it. So we use different word to talk about it. So that is 4 terms. And then the next 2 terms, 5 and 6, are variable and data. Variable is the characteristic that you want to collect. Okay, it's the name of the data. Okay, so for example, I want to know age. Age is the variable. If I'm collecting gender, so I want to know how many percentage is male or female, the variable is gender. It's actually the name of the data value that you are collecting. Data are the actual data value. So data would be, okay, if you are collecting age, it will be 19, 20, 25, 32, like that. And then if you're collecting gender, the data would be, you know, would be like female, male, female, female, male, like that. Okay. So that is the 6 variable or 6 terms that we are going to look at right now. And in the second video, we'll go through some examples on classifying this term.